My fiancée, a woman with a certified genius-level intellect and a memory that could recall the finest print on a page read years ago, had a peculiar habit of forgetting the things that mattered most. When she asked me to marry her, she presented an empty hand, having forgotten the ring. When we drove to the courthouse to make it official, she arrived without any of the necessary documents. And on the day we were supposed to stand before our friends and family, she forgot to come to our wedding at all. She was, I later learned, occupied with salvaging the wedding of her childhood friend, which was conveniently taking place in the hall directly next to ours. The shock of seeing the empty altar was too much for my father. His heart gave out right there in his pew. I spent days pleading with my fiancée to visit him in the hospital, to offer some kind of explanation. But the woman who had once been my whole world was now a universe away. I heard through mutual friends that she was busy with her friend's family, calling his mother Mom, and dismissing me to anyone who asked as just some overeager college boyfriend she couldn't shake. I buried my father alone. I filled out the paperwork for an overseas transfer at my company by myself. I was in our shared apartment, packing the life we had built into cardboard boxes, when she returned from what I could only describe as her honeymoon, looking radiant and fulfilled. She offered me a brilliant smile and asked, "Leo, is your dad feeling better? We should really pick a new date for our wedding. Give him something to look forward to." She was completely unaware that from the moment my father's heart stopped beating, there was no longer a we for her to be a part of. I was carefully extracting my winter clothes from the closet, folding each sweater and shirt into a suitcase with methodical precision. The quiet of the apartment was abruptly broken by the sound of the front door opening, followed by soft, tiptoeing footsteps. A pair of slender hands suddenly wrapped around my shoulders from behind, her 10 ice-cold fingers pressing gently against my eyelids. "Guess who?" she whispered. Her voice intentionally deepened into a husky, playful tone. It was a familiar game, one she always initiated after returning from a business trip, a prelude to affection. The man I used to be would have laughed, would have turned and said, "Of course, it's my beautiful Clara," before taking her freezing hands into my own to warm them. But that man was gone, buried with my father. The warmth I once felt for her had been extinguished, leaving only a cold emptiness. I was in no state for games. I gently pulled her hands from my face and turned back to my task of folding clothes, not saying a word. My girlfriend, Clara, seemed momentarily stunned by my reaction. Her cold fingers, which had been spread across my face, curled into a tight fist. Her bright eyes dimmed, and she adopted the look of a lost, rain-soaked kitten. "Leo, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with a pitiful quiver. "Hasn't giving me the silent treatment for a month been enough punishment? After you made that scene at the wedding, I had to spend hours explaining everything to our guests." A bitter, humorless smile formed on my face. A month ago, I had been made into a public spectacle, the punchline to a cruel joke for our entire social circle. My bride had abandoned me at the altar for another man. My father had suffered a fatal heart attack from the stress and humiliation, and Clara had her security escort me from the reception hall as if I were a vagrant. Even during my father's funeral, the whispers of my hometown neighbors followed me like a shadow. "That's him, isn't it? The one whose fiancée left him on his wedding day. He was supposed to be the top of his class, you know? Nearly 30 and can't even hold on to a woman. How embarrassing." I heard the shock is what killed his father. Can you imagine? Your own son driving you to an early grave. The suffocating dampness of that day, of lowering my father's casket into the ground, washed over me again. But my eyes remained dry. I had no more tears left. Returning to the present, I spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. "This isn't the silent treatment. We're breaking up." I had barely finished the sentence when Clara nodded, drawing out a long, theatrical "oh" as if this were all just a minor squabble. "So you're not ignoring me. You're fighting with me. Is that it? Didn't you get my text message? I explained everything. Mark's wedding had a last-minute emergency, and our families have known each other for ages. It's not like it was a huge deal to help them out." She settled onto the sofa with the regal air of a queen, picking up a gray sweater from my pile and beginning to fold it with clumsy, unfamiliar movements. Beneath the cascade of her dark hair, her delicate eyebrows were drawn together in concentration, her full red lips pursed slightly. "This sweater is hideous. You should really just get rid of it." I didn't respond. My gaze was fixed on the simple silver band that encircled her ring finger, and I felt a dull ache in my chest. I finally understood what the unusually cold, hard object pressing against my eyelids had been just moments before. Clara's eyes followed mine, and a flicker of guilt crossed her face. She quickly, almost secretively, slipped the ring from her finger and tucked it into her pocket. She then blinked her large eyes, attempting to charm her way out of the awkward situation, a tactic she had perfected over the years. "You have to be convincing when you're playing a part, you know? I forgot to take it off. You're not getting possessive again, are you, Leo?" In truth, I felt no anger. I just felt tired. The sight of the ring triggered a memory. When she had proposed to me over dinner, she had simply held out her hand, ringless, and asked if I would marry her. She claimed she had forgotten to buy one, adding that she never liked the feeling of being tied down by jewelry anyway. She promised to make up for it with a custom-designed Cartier ring on our wedding day. As it turned out, she kept that promise, but it was Mark's finger, not mine, that the custom ring was placed upon. And now she, the woman who hated being tied down, was wearing her own wedding band as if it were a permanent part of her, never wanting to remove it. Was I angry? No. The capacity for anger seemed to have been burned out of me. Over the past month, I had subjected myself to a form of self-torture, watching news clips and social media posts of Clara and Mark's lavish honeymoon tour around the world. My heart had grown numb from the constant exposure. I averted my gaze from her and simply took the sweater back from her hands. "My dad knitted this for me," I said flatly. Clara's hands were left empty, and a flash of annoyance crossed her features. Her lips tightened, but she managed to suppress her irritation. "By the way," she began, changing the subject, "how is your father? He must be feeling much better after a month of rest, don't you think?" Her eyes curved into a crescent moon smile. "I always thought our wedding venue was too plain. It didn't feel special enough for you. We can use this as an opportunity to set a new date, book a grander place, and throw a huge celebration. That will make your dad happy." I knew this was her version of an olive branch. She was in a good mood, offering me what she considered ample opportunity to concede. If I refused, she would inevitably erupt into one of her signature tantrums. But she had forgotten another crucial detail. The day we were scheduled to get our marriage license, she had met me at City Hall, only to announce she'd forgotten her identification papers. She then turned and left without a second thought, off to help Mark, the recently jilted groom, select a new tuxedo. We were never legally married. We didn't need a new wedding date. A sad, resigned smile touched my lips. There's no need for that. After being rebuffed several times, Clara's pleasant demeanor finally cracked, her expression darkening. Just as she was about to retort, her phone began to ring. The name mark lit up the screen, and her face instantly transformed. Her features softened, and her voice became impossibly gentle. "I just got back. What's wrong? Why are you calling?" She listened for a moment, then tucked the phone between her ear and shoulder as she walked over to the coat rack, retrieving her beige trench coat. She smiled into the phone. "Mark, you're really something else. I'm in the middle of trying to calm down my boyfriend here. This is the last time, you promise? I watched, detached, as she expertly slid the wedding band back onto her finger, checked her reflection in the full-length mirror, and grabbed her car keys from the bowl by the door. With her hand on the doorknob, she paused, as if just remembering my presence. She glanced back, running her fingers through my hair in a condescendingly affectionate gesture. All right, Leo, stop pouting. I bought a little something for you. I'll give it to you when I get back tonight. I watched her go, then walked to the large window overlooking the street. Through the glass, I saw a gleaming red Ferrari parked at the curb. Mark was leaning against the passenger door, holding a cup of bubble tea. Clara, who was notoriously germ-phobic, bent down without a moment's hesitation and took a long sip from his straw before walking around to the driver's side. I stopped watching and pulled the heavy curtains closed. I turned and picked up the completed overseas transfer application from my desk. Running my thumb over the sharp paper edge, I walked out of the apartment without a backward glance and hailed a taxi to take me to the office. By the time I had finished clearing out my desk, dusk had settled over the city. I had submitted the transfer request through the company's internal system a few days prior, and it had already received approval. All that remained was to deliver the physical copy for their records. As I walked through the office, I could feel the eyes of my colleagues on me, their whispers following me down the hall. Isn't that the guy from the video? The one who made a scene at Miss Hall's wedding at headquarters? Hey, I thought he took bereavement leave and just disappeared. What's he doing back? I bet he's here to hand in his resignation. He's been with the company for a decade and he's still just a team lead. I heard he went up for promotion 5 times and was rejected every single time. Pathetic. These comments, which once would have stung, now felt like distant noise. I had endured far worse in the days spent arranging my father's funeral. I kept my gaze fixed straight ahead and knocked on my boss's door. Mr. Roberts? Come in. Mr. Roberts looked up from his computer, saw the form in my hand, and nodded with a look of quiet satisfaction. Leo, when you mentioned wanting an overseas transfer the other day, I wasn't sure you were serious. You always turned it down in the past, said you couldn't handle a long-distance relationship with your girlfriend. You were surprisingly decisive this time around. Some representatives from headquarters are visiting tomorrow to inspect the branch. Just make sure you come in one last time to show your face, and then you'll be all set to go. You know, he added, leaning back in his chair, we started here together as interns. You were always sharper than me, helped me out of more than a few jams. I'm glad you've finally decided to look out for yourself. It's for the best. I lowered my eyes. Yeah, maybe it was just bad luck. All the other interns from our starting year had climbed the ladder to become executives, while I remained stagnant. Leaving the office building, I paused to look back at the glass and steel skyscraper where I had dedicated 10 years of my life. In that same decade, Clara's family business, Hall Corporation, had grown into a global powerhouse, its branch offices like this one reaching for the clouds. But why, in that same span of time, had our relationship so completely disintegrated? Our story was a classic tale of the wealthy girl and the boy from the wrong side of the tracks. My mother passed away when I was a child, and my father raised me alone on a meager salary. Throughout college, every moment I wasn't in class was spent working odd jobs, from waiting tables to even sitting in on lectures for other students just to make ends meet. I remember one instance when a student not only refused to pay me for my notes, but also gathered his friends to corner me in an alley, intending to take the little money I had. I was desperate. That was when Clara appeared, like a heroine from a movie, with her bodyguards in tow. She pulled me up from the grimy pavement and offered to buy me dinner. She told me, blushing, that her grades were terrible, and she was afraid she would fail her exams, asking if I could tutor her. I knew she was an excellent student. It was just her kind way of offering me help without hurting my pride. I was immediately captivated by her bright, sunny disposition, an effortless radiance that suggested a life untouched by hardship. The day I finally agreed to be her boyfriend, she took my hand and proudly announced to anyone who would listen on campus, "This is my boyfriend, the smartest man in the entire university." When we graduated, I turned down a full scholarship to pursue a doctorate abroad. When I entered the workforce, I declined a six-figure offer for an executive position at an overseas tech giant. All I ever wanted was to build a life with Clara, to marry her, have children, and watch them grow. But everything shifted a year ago, on the day her childhood sweetheart, Mark, returned to the country. That was the first time Clara ever left my side when I was sick, abandoning me with a high fever to go pick him up from the airport. That night, at his welcome home party, she drank herself into a stupor, clinging to Mark's arm and refusing to leave with me. I watched as she looked at him with red-rimmed eyes and pleaded, "Mark, please don't ever leave me again, okay?" After that night, our arguments about Mark became a constant, draining feature of our relationship. I wanted her to establish clear boundaries. She accused me of being possessive and controlling, of not trusting her to even have male friends. She once sneered at me, saying that technically she had known Mark since they were children, and I was the one who had come along later. Then, 2 months ago, on the day Mark sent her an invitation to his own wedding, she, the same woman who had deftly deflected my own hints about marriage for years, suddenly placed a piece of braised pork in my rice bowl and mumbled, "Leo, why don't we get married too?" I shook my head, forcefully pushing the memories away. My shadow stretched long and solitary in the light of the setting sun. I had no one left. After I had walked a few more blocks, the sky had faded to a deep, starless black. I was about to take out my phone to call a ride home when I heard a familiar, affectionate laugh from nearby. "Mark, hold on tight. If I drop you, I'm not taking responsibility." I turned my head toward the source of the voice and saw them standing at the entrance of a brightly lit bar. Clara was carefully propping up a heavily intoxicated Mark, the two of them pressed together in an intimate embrace. Mark's arms were draped loosely around Clara's neck, and he was smiling blissfully, like a cherished pet nuzzling its owner. A group of their friends surrounded them, cheering loudly. "All right, the game's not done yet. Go, Clara, you have to link arms and take a drink with your husband when you stop." Mark is so handsome. When we were kids and played house, Clara would fight all the other girls to be the princess who married the prince. Who would have thought the prince and princess would actually end up together for real? Clara was beaming, her expression soft, as she gently supported the swaying, intoxicated Mark, treating him as if he were the most precious and fragile object in the world. She and Mark took the glasses that were handed to them, expertly linked their arms, and drank in unison. The crowd's cheers erupted, growing louder. People clapped and began to chant, "Kiss, kiss, kiss!" Clara hesitated for a split second, not moving. Mark, however, smiled and came to her defense. "Didn't we agree that was the final game? We've been playing these wedding games all night. Everyone should be getting home." But in the next moment, Clara wrapped her arms around Mark's neck and pressed her lips to his. Her eyes were open, clear and tender, but with a deep, possessive glint hidden within their depths. A moment later, she slowly pulled away, releasing her grip on Mark and clutching her own head as if suddenly overwhelmed. "I want to go home. My head hurts so much." I watched it all, every detail of Clara's solicitous care for Mark, her cautious and protective love. I also watched as she shakily pulled out her phone and dialed a number. A moment later, my own phone began to ring. From across the small plaza, Clara heard the ringtone. The moment our eyes met, she straightened her posture, her drunken act vanishing. The surrounding crowd looked between us, confused. "Clara? Who's this handsome guy?" one of them asked. Clara's eyes darted around nervously. "He's the son of my family's driver," she mumbled. "My mother probably sent him to tell me it's time to come home for dinner." A self-satisfied smirk crossed Mark's face. Playing the role of the benevolent husband, he said slowly and clearly, "Oh, the driver's son. Well, you'd better make sure you take good care of your young lady then." The old me would have been crushed, would have tearfully demanded to know who she truly loved. But now, I just found the entire charade exhausting. Without giving them another look, I turned and climbed into the rideshare I had just summoned. When I got back to the apartment, my stomach was twisting in knots from having not eaten all day, so I boiled some water and made a simple bowl of plain noodles. I had barely taken 2 bites when I heard the sharp click-clack of high heels on the floorboards outside. The next second, the door was kicked open. Clara stood in the doorway, and upon seeing me eating, she scowled and snatched the chopsticks right out of my hand. "Leo! Why did you just turn and leave like that? Do you have any idea how embarrassing you made me look?" What I hadn't anticipated was that Mark had come with her. He was holding onto Clara's arm with a feigned look of concern, his voice soft. "Clara, we agreed you would speak to him calmly." He then turned to me, a smile on his face that did little to conceal the look of triumph in his eyes. "Leo, please don't be upset. Clara has always been a little hot-tempered. She's impatient with everyone, except for me. But you were in the wrong, too. Clara was drunk. How could you just abandon her like that?" I reached for another pair of chopsticks and took a large mouthful of noodles. They were bland, tasteless. Without looking up from my bowl, I replied, "Clara, you had your husband there to look after you. Why would you need me?" Clara's face immediately darkened, the atmosphere in the room turning heavy and cold. "What do you mean, my husband?" "Leo, your jealousy has a limit. Those were just old friends from our social circle. Mark and I were just playing along with them. Do you really think I enjoy drinking like that? I was doing it for you." I found her statement utterly ridiculous. She had been visibly reveling in every second of her public affection with Mark, and now she was trying to cast herself as the victim. Looking up at her, I put down my chopsticks. "For me?" "For you," Clara said, as if it were the most self-evident fact in the world. "My mother said that she would only agree to make me the heir of the company if I married Mark. Only by doing that could we finally be together. Only then could I get you promoted to a position at headquarters. Wasn't this entire thing for you? For your career?" Mark frowned, an almost imperceptible flash of malice crossing his eyes, but he played his part. "Clara's right. You probably don't realize this, but she's the one who has been rejecting all of your promotion applications for the past several years. It was all to protect you. She's really sacrificed a lot for your sake." I froze. A deep, penetrating chill shot up my spine, so cold it made me shiver. For all these years, I had pushed myself to the brink of exhaustion, working tirelessly to prove myself, to stand beside Clara as an equal through my own merit. And now Mark was telling me that Clara had single-handedly tossed all of my hard work into the trash. So what was the point of all those late nights spent drafting proposals, all those business dinners where I drank until my stomach burned just to secure a deal, all the missed holidays, the fact that I had barely seen my own father in his final years? What was it all for? A sharp sting filled my nose, and my eyes instantly welled up. My voice was thick and hoarse as I asked her, "Is that true?" Clara showed no trace of guilt. Instead, she nodded, as if she were expecting me to praise her for it. "Of course. But don't you worry, from this point forward you'll be the president of Hall Corporation. You can have anything you desire. What are a few minor promotions compared to that?" It suddenly struck me as profoundly laughable. Clara had always been adamant about keeping our relationship a secret from the public, Even for our wedding, she had instructed me to invite only my closest relatives and friends, telling me not to make a fuss. No one in our professional lives even knew we were a couple. Protecting me was just a convenient excuse. It was all about satisfying her own desire for control, for keeping me in a subordinate position where I would always be dependent on her. Only now did I truly understand that the relationship I had cherished as a sweet, genuine love had never been pure at all. I shook my head and finally uttered the words that had been sitting like stones in my heart. "Clara, let's break up." Clara's eyes widened, and she stared at me as if she couldn't comprehend what I had just said. Her lips trembled, but she was unable to form a single word. A flicker of undisguised joy crossed Mark's face. He quickly interjected, scolding me. "Leo, you can't break up with Clara just because she and I are close. She really does love you. On our honeymoon, the first thing she thought of whenever she saw something interesting was buying it for you." Even in this moment, he couldn't resist twisting the knife, bringing up their honeymoon. Mark was truly a despicable person. With someone to back her up, Clara regained her composure, and her shock quickly morphed into anger. Her beautiful face seemed to harden, as if carved from ice. "Leo, you're really testing my patience, aren't you? Do you think I'm so infatuated with you that I can't live without you? Breaking up? Do you even have the right to break up with me? For the last 10 years, you've lived in my apartment, eaten my food, and I'm the one who got you your job. What more could you possibly want?" The words flowed from her lips, perfectly rehearsed. So this was her true opinion of me. In her mind, she was the generous benefactor in our relationship. The old me might have argued with her, might have tried to debate who had truly given more. But now, looking at her enraged face, I suddenly smiled. "Thank you." Instantly, the anger seemed to drain from Clara's face, leaving her looking confused. "Thank you for what?" she mumbled. My lips held their slight curve. "Thank you," I said calmly, "for letting me finally understand that in your heart, I'm nothing more than a pathetic charity case who can't survive without you." With that, I picked up my empty bowl and chopsticks, took them to the kitchen sink, and washed them under the running water. When I returned, Clara was still standing in the same spot, motionless. Mark handed her a glass of water with honey. "Clara, drink this. It'll help with the alcohol. It was always your favorite." For the first time, Clara seemed distracted, placing the glass on the coffee table without even looking at it. Her face was flushed. After a long, silent moment, she said softly to me, "That's not what I meant." I ignored her. I turned around and picked up the suitcase I had already finished packing. Just as I reached the front door, a glass shattered against the doorframe right behind me. Sticky honey water splattered across my back. Then, another box hit the floor with a thud. 2 ceramic rings rolled out. I stared down at the simple rings at my feet, confused. Behind me, Clara's voice rose into a pained cry. "I made those rings for you while I was overseas. I was thinking about you the entire time. Leo, why are you being so difficult? Why are you running away from home?" I had to laugh at the sheer absurdity of it. The inside of the rings was clearly engraved with the initials C and M. They were obviously a matching set for her and Mark. And yet she had the audacity to claim she had made them for me. I didn't hesitate for another second. I grabbed my suitcase and found a nearby hotel to stay in for the night. I was leaving the city for good tomorrow anyway. The next morning, after showering, I went to the office. I was not prepared for the scene that greeted me. The moment I stepped through the doors, I was met with a chorus of fawning compliments. "Wow, Miss Hall and Mr. Coleman, you two are such a perfect couple. You're even wearing matching outfits today." I completely ship it. "Miss Hall, Mr. Coleman, I'm a huge fan of you two. Can I get a photo?" There, In the center of the office stood Clara and Mark, arm in arm, basking in the adoration of the employees, while my boss, Mr. Roberts, stood beside them, smiling obsequiously. So these were the representatives from headquarters. Upon seeing me, Mr. Roberts made the formal introduction. "Leo, this is our president from headquarters, Miss Hall, and our vice president, Mr. Coleman. They're here to review the overseas transfer situation." Clara deliberately turned her head away, her recently smiling lips now pressed into a thin, hard line. "Who is being transferred this time?" she asked, her voice cold. Mr. Roberts presented me and two other colleagues. "These three," he said with a proud smile. Instantly, Clara's expression turned rigid, her eyes growing dark. Mark's eyes, however, flashed with undisguised pleasure. He immediately seized the opportunity, scolding Mr. Roberts with a tone of feigned shock. "How do you people manage this branch? Are you not aware that our company has a strict policy against transferring employees who are married or have children? Both the applicant and the person who approved the transfer will be penalized." Mr. Roberts looked utterly bewildered. "But none of them are married," he stammered. Clara's face was grim. She pointed a finger directly at me and said coldly, "Didn't this man apply for marriage leave just a short while ago?" Mr. Roberts sighed softly and answered with quiet honesty. "He did initially request marriage leave, but there must have been some mistake. He later amended it to bereavement leave. His father passed away." At his words, Clara's face went completely white. Her outstretched finger stiffened, and she stared at me with an expression of pure disbelief. As if a forgotten memory was struggling to surface, her eyes flickered with confusion. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked in a low voice. "That your father had passed away?" I found it all so laughable. My father had always adored Clara, treating her like the daughter he never had. He used to tell me how blessed I was to have found her, and that he couldn't wait for the day she would finally call him Dad. But what he got in the end was Clara marrying another man, and affectionately calling that man's father Dad. "Is that really necessary, Miss Hall?" I said flatly. "Does headquarters truly need to oversee the personal family matters of every single employee?" Clara sensed she was losing control of the situation, and a palpable unease began to radiate from her. She gritted her teeth, her anger flaring. "What do you mean it's not necessary? I was his daughter-in-law." "Whose daughter-in-law are you?" As everyone stared, stunned into silence, the main doors to the office swung open. A middle-aged woman entered, the fine lines around her eyes conveying a sharp, inherent authority. It was Clara's mother, the true chairman and power behind Hall Corporation. Everyone in the office immediately snapped to attention. "Good morning, Chairwoman Hall," they chimed in unison. The chairwoman gave a slight nod, then turned her head and smiled at Mark. "Mark, I sent you two lovebirds to make an appearance at the branch offices. What is all this commotion about?" Remembering what Clara had just declared, everyone in the room held their breath, not daring to utter a sound. The color drained from Mark's face. He forced a strained smile, his eyes welling up with crocodile tears. One of Clara's best friends is Leo's wife. When Clara heard he was being transferred, she just wanted to stand up for her friend. Under her mother's piercing gaze, Clara bit her lip and said nothing, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. The chairwoman's eyes narrowed. "Someone dared to violate company policy?" she said sternly. "I'd like to see for myself who was so bold." I stepped forward. "Chairwoman Hall," I said calmly, "it's a misunderstanding. I am not married. My ex-girlfriend and I broke up on amicable terms some time ago." The chairwoman raised an eyebrow, looking me over from head to toe. Then she turned back to Clara. "I've reviewed Leo Chen's file. The young man is indeed single. Are you certain you're not mistaken? He has a flight to catch for his transfer today. Don't delay him." A flight to catch? Clara's pupils contracted violently. She turned to look at my calm, impassive face, and her heart seemed to stop. A look of pure panic washed over her. Forgetting all of her carefully constructed corporate composure, she cried out, "Mom, it wasn't my friend, it was me! I'm Leo's wife. How could I be mistaken? We got our marriage license on November 3rd. He must be lying. I was there with him." The entire room collectively held its breath, shocked to be witnessing such a high-stakes family drama unfold. Clara seemed to relax slightly, believing her declaration would be enough to halt my transfer. But the crease between her mother's eyebrows only deepened. Her gaze shifted back and forth between me and Clara before she delivered her judgment. "What nonsense are you talking about? Even if he is your ex-boyfriend, your official documents have been locked away in my personal safe this entire time. What could you have possibly used to get a marriage license?" Clara, the woman with the famously photographic memory, seemed to have genuinely forgotten that we had never actually gotten married. "How is that possible?" she demanded. "Mom, don't lie to me." The chairwoman's expression grew severe, her tone sharp with impatience. "I told you to address me as Chairwoman Hall in the office. Such disrespect. I have spoiled you. Your documents have always been in my safe, and you have never once asked me for them." Piece by piece, her mother methodically dismantled her claim. "And if I recall correctly, you spent that entire day with Mark, picking out a wedding dress. When would you have had the time to go to City Hall? I think you've simply been overworked lately, and you're starting to imagine things. Stop interfering with Leo's future." Her words were a clear and potent threat, warning Clara to leave me alone, and the reminder was brutally effective. Clara looked as if she had been physically struck. She finally remembered. She hadn't gotten the license with me that day because the moment she had agreed to marry me, she had been consumed by regret. So she had intentionally dragged her feet on the way to City Hall, feigned forgetting her documents, and then looked at me with a guilty expression and said, "I'm so sorry, Leo. Can we just get the license after the wedding ceremony? There aren't any auspicious days left for a while." At that exact moment, she had received a call from Mark, asking for her help in trying on a wedding gown for his fiancée, and she had seized the opportunity to flee. Remembering everything now, she turned to stare at my impassive face, her lips trembling, unable to speak. I addressed the chairwoman. "I don't know, Miss Hall. I believe she may have mistaken me for someone else at her wedding, which led to a small misunderstanding. I suppose she's just playing a joke on me now." The chairwoman nodded, looking at me with an expression of approval. "Leo, don't worry about the transfer. I have high expectations for you." I nodded once and turned to leave. Clara instinctively reached out a hand to stop me. "Leo!" But her mother intercepted her, her face stern. "Shouldn't you and Mark be continuing your tour of the branches? I have to present the company's quarterly performance results at headquarters today." Mark finally moved. His venomous gaze shifted from me to Clara, and he took her right hand, lacing his fingers through hers. Clara resisted for a moment, her eyes still fixed on my retreating back. But after a second, she acquiesced, allowing him to lead her away. I no longer had any interest in their drama. All I wanted was to escape this city. I went downstairs and caught a taxi to the airport. On the way, I watched the familiar streets and buildings fly past my window and silently said my goodbyes. I was in the middle of checking in for my flight when, to my surprise, my phone rang. It was Clara. I frowned, having no desire to speak with her. But years of habit took over, and my thumb swiped to accept the call. "Hello? What is it?" I asked, my voice tired. The sound on the other end was distorted by the roar of a strong wind. Clara's words tumbled out in a frantic rush. "Leo, don't leave yet! Wait for me, I'm almost at the airport!" Then she hung up. I stood there, holding the phone to my ear, a perplexed look on my face. The airport? Why would Clara come to the airport? She was terrified of her mother. There was no way she would defy her to come after me. I wasn't so deluded as to think she was so attached to our past that she would be willing to throw away the power and status she had spent her entire life working towards. But to my utter astonishment, Clara did appear, panting and out of breath. She bent over and grabbed the handle of my suitcase, looking up at me with the pleading eyes of an abandoned puppy. "Leo, please don't go. I don't want to be president anymore. I want to marry you. I'll go steal my documents right now, and we can go get our license, okay?" I knew that even at 30 years old, Clara had been so sheltered by her family that she was, in many ways, still a child. She operated under the belief that if she just looked sad enough and offered a simple apology, the entire world would bend to her will and forgive her. I used to find this immaturity endearing, hoping she could remain that carefree forever. But now, I just felt a profound and weary disappointment. She hadn't come racing after me out of love. She had come because she was afraid of losing her most obedient and reliable toy. But the world did not revolve around her. It was time for her to grow up. Looking at her, my gaze was completely calm. "Go home, Clara. Stop this. You've worked for 10 years to secure that inheritance. Now that it's finally within your reach, you can't just throw it all away." The surge of adrenaline that had carried Clara all the way to the airport began to subside. Her grip on my suitcase tightened. She bit her lip, her expression stubborn. "Leo, please, just don't take the transfer. If you stay in this city, I promise I'll do whatever you want. Do you remember why I always told you our company forbids overseas assignments? When I was a baby, my mother, who is a true workaholic, chose to expand the family business overseas. She was gone for 5 years. But when she finally came back, my father had another child with another woman. From that day forward, my mom changed. She became paranoid, suspicious, and could never accept that kind of betrayal. The reason I was always so hesitant to marry you is because I was afraid. I was afraid that the day you stopped loving me, I would become just like her." Her words were startlingly honest. I knew this was her deepest, most guarded fear. In fact, her father had done something far worse. In a desperate attempt to seize half of the Hall family's assets, he had orchestrated Clara's kidnapping and held her for ransom. Although she was rescued, she fell gravely ill afterwards. The shadow of abandonment had cast a long pall over her entire life, becoming her own private horror. That was why I had always been so patient with her, so careful to protect her fragile heart, hoping that she would one day feel secure in my love. But the truth was, this person who claimed to be terrified of marriage had no issue with her wedding to Mark, and had looked utterly blissful on their honeymoon. Perhaps even she failed to realize the extraordinary level of dependence and trust she placed in this childhood friend she hadn't seen in a decade. After 10 years together, all I wanted was a clean break. I kept my voice gentle. "Clara, I can see that Mark genuinely cares for you. You don't have to hide your feelings anymore. I wish you both the very best, a long and happy life together." Clara argued anxiously. "No, that's not it. I just think of him as a younger brother. He was the one who saved me from my dad. I'll admit, I had a small crush on him once, but just a tiny one. The person I truly love is you, Leo. You can't leave me." As she spoke, her voice suddenly grew hoarse, cracking with unshed tears. I found it all so pathetic. Even now she was burying her head in the sand, thinking she could hide from reality. In her heart, the inheritance was more important than me. Her mother's approval was more important than me. Mark was more important than me. Sometimes, even a simple night out with her friends was more important than me. We had been slowly drifting apart for a very long time, and yet here she stood, insisting that she loved me. Just as we reached this impasse, a dozen men in black suits marched into the airport terminal. Chairwoman Hall had arrived, with Mark in tow, to retrieve her daughter. At the sight of her mother's stern expression, Clara's eyes filled with fear, and she instinctively let go of my suitcase. I sneered inwardly. This was the Clara I knew, a perpetual child who would never truly grow up. Before her mother could even say a word, Clara swallowed hard and automatically took several steps away from me. She kept glancing back over her shoulder, then said with a sudden burst of determination, "Leo, I'll wait for you. The transfer is only for 3 years. I'll wait for you at home." It was so ironic I didn't even bother to look at her. Who needed her to wait? And she still hadn't realized that I had already moved all of my belongings out of the house. There was no trace of me left there. My home had ceased to exist the day my father died. I turned, boarded the plane, and didn't look back. After landing, I had dinner with the colleague who came to pick me up. His name was David, and he had been transferred to this branch a year before me. We had met a few times at company events. The moment he saw me, he clapped me on the shoulder. "Leo, you finally made it. Our boss here is constantly telling me I should try to poach you. I always knew you didn't want to leave the country, so I never bothered. If I'd known you were coming, I would have been calling you every day." A small smile touched my lips. In truth, this overseas firm had made several subtle inquiries about me joining their team, even going so far as to deepen their partnership with our parent company and increase the number of transfer positions, all in the hope that I would eventually come over. But I had been blinded by love at the time and had rejected all of their overtures. Thinking back on it now, I was such a fool. As we were eating, my phone, which was lying on the table, began to vibrate incessantly. It was Clara. I frowned slightly. A call from her could only mean trouble. But David looked shocked. "Is that Miss Hall from the parent company? Does she need something from you?" "Leo, you should probably answer that." Reluctantly, I picked up the phone. On the other end, Clara's usually composed voice was trembling with rage. "Leo, where did all of your things go? You promised you would be with me forever. Why did you break your promise?" Her voice was so shrill and hysterical that I had to hold the phone a few inches away from my ear. David's knife and fork slipped from his grasp, clattering onto his plate. He stared at me, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. I just said coldly into the phone, "Clara, from the moment my dad died, you and I have been over." I hung up. After a moment's consideration, I blocked her number. When I looked up, David was staring at me, looking as if he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. "What is it?" I asked, a little confused. David stammered, "Leo, the girlfriend you were always talking about, was that Miss Hall?" He then added, "But someone in the company group chat sent me a video a while back." I understood immediately. Everyone at the company knew I had a long-term girlfriend, but no one had ever met her or even knew her name. Some had even whispered that I was just a lonely guy who had made her up. And the video of me crashing Clara and Mark's wedding, begging her to come to my father's bedside, had been passed around the entire corporation as a piece of cheap entertainment. Now, facing David, I saw no point in hiding the truth. "Yes," I said frankly. "We used to date. It didn't work out, so we broke up." David, having pieced together his own narrative of events, looked at me with immense sympathy and patted my shoulder. "Don't take it too hard, Leo. Guys like us can't compete with the son of the Coleman family. I'll introduce you to a nice, down-to-earth girl later." I just chuckled and shook my head. Once I officially began my new role, I felt an incredible sense of liberation. It was astonishing what a person could accomplish when there was no one actively sabotaging their efforts or deliberately making their life more difficult. Every ounce of effort I put in was met with a corresponding reward. After just 1 month, I was promoted to an executive position, a level I had never been able to reach in 10 years of work and 5 failed promotion applications back home. Meanwhile, Clara's face was frequently splashed across the front pages of business magazines and society columns, always with Mark by her side. They attended countless galas and corporate events as a married couple, putting on a grand display of public affection and cultivating a reputation as a perfectly matched power couple. I assumed Clara must have finally come to terms with her feelings and realized that her true love, buried deep in her heart all these years, was Mark. And that was fine. Seeing them together now, my heart was as still and calm as a glass of water. I felt nothing at all. In what felt like the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. It was time for me to return to the home office to report on my work. I never imagined that Clara and Mark would be the ones sent to pick me up from the airport. Clara, hidden behind a pair of large, dark sunglasses, shot me a disdainful look and immediately turned to walk away. Mark, however, maintained his mask of gentle affability, his words dripping with veiled sarcasm. "Leo, you look like you've been doing much better for yourself abroad these past 3 years than you ever did back home. You've even put on some muscle. You probably forgot all about us." Since they were there to greet me on behalf of headquarters, I couldn't exactly refuse their ride, so I followed them. I discreetly flexed my arm, which wasn't particularly visible under my winter coat, and thought to myself that yes, I had gotten a bit stronger. "Yeah, things have been good," I said non-committally. When we reached the underground parking garage, Clara slipped into the driver's seat. Mark opened the passenger door and settled in. Only after he had fastened his seatbelt did he turn and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Leo. I completely forgot. You should be in the passenger seat. Let me get out." Clara snorted from the driver's seat. "Don't enable his bad habits. He can sit in the back." I was confused. Was it some new etiquette to have guests sit in the front? Why else would Mark have offered me the seat? But since Clara had spoken, I just nodded and got into the back. Clara's hands on the steering wheel suddenly tightened, her knuckles turning white. Her eyes were dark as she said through gritted teeth, "Leo, don't you remember what you used to say? The passenger seat was exclusively for your boyfriend. You hated it when anyone else sat there." I was even more baffled. "Yeah, Mark is your husband, so it's fine for him to sit there." Clara's face grew even darker. She drove the rest of the way in a tense, suffocating silence. I took out my phone and sent a quick text to my wife, letting her know I had landed safely so she wouldn't worry. Yes, during these past 3 years, David had introduced me to a female colleague named Sophie. We had gotten to know each other and eventually fallen in love. She was also on an overseas assignment from our company and, like me, had lost all of her immediate family, so she had no strong desire to return home. Perhaps it was our shared sense of loss, or perhaps we were just two lonely people finding solace in one another. But we discovered we had an endless supply of things to talk about. A year later, we were married. By the time I had to return for this trip, she was 3 months pregnant. She still had some projects to finish up, so I didn't ask her to come with me. Seeing me grinning at my phone in the rearview mirror, Clara gritted her teeth in frustration. She cleared her throat loudly and said, "Leo, aren't you even going to ask me how I've been?" Before I could formulate a reply, she began answering her own question. "My mom retired last month and handed the entire company over to me. Now the company is all mine." Was she trying to show off? I understood. This was the classic post-breakup competition of who was doing better. My wife texted me back. "Glad you landed safely, honey. The baby was very well behaved today." She followed it with a small emoji of a bear blowing a heart. A warm smile spread across my face, and I sent a heart emoji back. Feeling much lighter, I casually replied to Clara, Congratulations, Miss Hall. The next second, she slammed on the brakes. I was thrown forward, barely catching myself with my hands on the front seats. I rubbed my bruised forehead, about to protest, but Clara was staring at me in the rearview mirror, her eyes blazing with a strange fury. Mark's gaze flickered between us. "Leo," he began, "why are you being so formal? You're not still angry about my relationship with Clara, are you? She's missed you a lot these past few years. She even deliberately added more overseas business trips to her schedule just to try and find you." Clara cut him off, but her resentful words were aimed at me. "Mark, why are you telling him all that? Some people have no heart. He's been holding a grudge for 3 years. So petty." "Huh? Who was holding a grudge? Me?" While I was still trying to process her bizarre accusation, Mark jumped in again with a smile. "Leo, you're looking more handsome than ever. You must have been very popular with the ladies abroad." "It was okay," I said vaguely. "I'm married now." Beep. Someone laid on the horn, a long, piercing blast of sound. It was Clara. She whipped her head around to face me, her eyes bloodshot. "What did you just say?" she asked, her voice raspy. I looked her directly in the eye and stated plainly, "I got married while I was abroad." Mark's eyes lit up, and he couldn't suppress a wide grin from spreading across his face. "Leo, everyone saw how devoted you were to Clara. You can't joke about something as serious as marriage." But Clara seemed to be lost in thought, a strange, knowing smile playing on her lips. "Leo, I never knew you learned how to lie after being away for 3 years. Well, now that you're back, you're not leaving again. All the promises I made to you can finally be fulfilled." I didn't know what to say. If she chose not to believe me, so be it. Clara was the type of person who, once an idea was fixed in her head, would never let it go. Arguing with her was a pointless waste of energy. After we arrived at the office, I quickly gave my report on my work from the past 3 years. While Clara and Mark were occupied in a meeting, I went to the Human Resources Department and pulled out my letter of resignation. The HR employee stared at me, dumbfounded. After all, every employee who went on an overseas assignment returned to a guaranteed executive position and a comfortable future. This was the first time he had ever witnessed someone come back from a transfer only to immediately quit. "Okay," he stammered. "I'll submit this for you. You should get a response within 3 business days." I just offered a faint smile. I turned and took a taxi to my father's grave. This was the other primary reason I had returned. On the way, the villagers in my hometown still pointed and gossiped as I passed. "Well, look who it is. The kid vanished for 3 years. Did he just get out of prison?" "Don't talk nonsense. His wife told everyone he went abroad to make a name for himself. He's a big shot now." Wife? Who could they possibly be talking about? I paid their words no mind. Their gossip was usually only half grounded in reality anyway. When I arrived at my father's grave, I was surprised to find the headstone impeccably clean, as if someone polished it on a regular basis. Not thinking too much of it, I knelt down, placed the bouquet of flowers I had brought, lit 3 sticks of incense, and bowed my head several times. When I stood up, I gently touched the cool stone of the marker and murmured, "Dad, your son hasn't been able to visit you in 3 years. Did you miss me? I came to tell you that you have a daughter-in-law now, and you're about to have a grandchild. I know you never liked to travel, but my career is in another country now, so it might be a long time before I can see you again. But don't worry, I'll come back whenever I have the chance." A soft breeze rustled the leaves in the trees overhead. For a moment it felt like my father's gentle hand on my shoulder. Then, I heard footsteps approaching from behind me. It was Clara, slightly out of breath. When she saw me, she slowed her pace. She smiled, looking very proud of herself. "Leo, I knew you would be here. She expertly took a handkerchief from her pocket and began to wipe the already clean surface of my father's headstone. I was a little stunned. "You've been taking care of my dad's grave all these years?" Clara lowered her eyes, her long, thick lashes hiding her expression. "I heard what happened to your father from the villagers," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I also know you were deeply hurt, and it's only natural that you were so sad you felt the need to run away from me. I hadn't chosen the transfer to run away from her, regardless of what she wanted to believe." "Thank you," I said genuinely. "But I didn't take the transfer because of you. I did it for myself, for my youth, for all the hard work I put in." Clara suddenly pulled me into a hug, her arms wrapping tightly around my waist. "Why are you still being so stubborn?" she mumbled into my chest. "Don't worry, I'm in charge of the company now, and Mark and I are about to go through with the marriage falling apart part of our plan. The moment we're divorced, I'll get my documents, and we can get our license and go public with our relationship." I think Clara's brain might function on a different plane of reality than most people's. We had not had a single point of contact in 3 years. How did she leap from that to the conclusion that we would be getting married and going public? How could she possibly still believe we were in a relationship? I pushed her away, afraid her grip was strong enough to be painful. But Clara was completely oblivious to how bizarre her behavior was. Before I could say another word, she was pulling me by the arm. "Leo, I've thrown a celebration party for you at the branch office. You're coming back with me right now." On the way, Clara talked non-stop, leaving me no opportunity to get a word in edgewise. When we returned to the office, I saw that the main lobby had been decorated with balloons and streamers, with a large banner that read, "Celebrating Leo Chen's triumphant return." Ethan, however, did not look pleased, his face tight with tension. The moment he saw Clara, he breathed a visible sigh of relief and pushed his way through the crowd with a forced smile. "Clara, you're finally here. Everyone's been waiting for you." The same employees who had once looked down on me and made my work life a living hell were now either avoiding my gaze or acting as if nothing had ever happened, showering me with effusive praise. "Mr. Chen, I always knew you were a man of great talent, and now look at you. Mr. Chen, do you remember me? I used to be on your team. Even back then, I knew our team lead was destined for great things." Clara smiled, clearly delighted with herself. That is, until the HR employee walked up to her with a conflicted expression on his face and handed her a single piece of paper. She looked annoyed. "We're in the middle of a celebration right now. Can't this wait until business hours?" Despite her words, she took the paper. Her expression changed dramatically. Her lips moved silently as she read the words, "Resignation letter." The next second, Clara's eyes were locked on me, her mind clearly in turmoil. She casually set the resignation letter aside, but I had seen her read it. "Miss Hall," I reminded her calmly, "if you could please sign that. My flight back is tomorrow." Clara's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're leaving tomorrow? Leo, are you throwing your entire future away?" I was growing tired of this conversation. "Miss Hall, my wife is overseas. I have no intention of building a career here. I assume that's not a problem?" Seeing his opportunity, Mark couldn't resist adding fuel to the fire. "Leo, do you really have a family abroad? In that case, Clara, maybe you should just—" He didn't get to finish his sentence. Clara's face instantly darkened. "Leo, stop playing games. You submitted your resignation just to hint that you want a promotion, didn't you? I've already decided to transfer you to headquarters and make you a vice president. What more could you possibly want?" Mark, the current vice president, flinched, clearly unhappy with this proposal. Just as we reached a stalemate, a gentle, pleasant female voice cut through the tension. "Excuse me, is this where Leo Chen works?" The moment I heard that voice, I immediately turned and walked toward the entrance. It was my wife's voice, I hurried over to her. "Honey, what are you doing here?" I exclaimed, a mixture of shock and delight on my face. Seeing Sophie walking quickly toward me, I rushed to support her, my heart pounding in my chest. "Sophie, slow down. Be careful," I chided gently. She smiled and gently stroked her very prominent baby bump. In that instant, Clara froze. The entire office froze. Some of the quicker-witted employees recovered and started laughing and fawning over me. "Mr. Chen, I can't believe you're married and about to be a father. You're truly living the dream. We're all so jealous." "Yes, and your wife is so beautiful, Mr. Chen. You're a lucky man." Sophie's ears turned a bright shade of red, but she lifted her chin and squeezed my hand tightly, as if staking her claim. "Louis, I wanted to surprise you. And I wanted to come and see your dad." Clara finally snapped out of her stupor, but her usual composure had completely abandoned her. She had clearly lost her mind. She took a step forward and tried to pry Sophie's hand from my arm. "You're lying. Leo is my husband. You're just some actress he hired to make me angry, aren't you?" Fearing what this unhinged woman might do, I instinctively raised my arm to block her. My hand accidentally swung back and struck her across the face with a sharp, clear slap. I immediately pulled Sophie behind me, watching Clara warily, my brow furrowed. Mark had already rushed to Clara's side. "Clara, are you okay? Does it hurt?" he asked repeatedly. Clara just held her reddening cheek, her entire body trembling. 2 streams of tears flowed unbidden from her eyes. "Leo," she said, her voice hoarse, "tell me this is all fake. You promised you would only love me for the rest of your life." I looked at her, my expression utterly cold. "Clara, I am going to tell you one last time, with all the seriousness I can muster. We broke up a long time ago. We have nothing to do with each other. My wife's name is Sophie. She loves me, and I love her." With that, I carefully escorted Sophie out of the office. This time, Clara did not follow. That night, I took Sophie to a hotel to rest, with plans to take her to my hometown the next day to visit the cemetery. Early the next morning, I received the notification that my resignation had been officially approved. At the same time, I saw a news alert that Clara and Mark were publicly flaunting their affection and announcing their plans to have a child the following year. Their fans online were ecstatic. Clara sent me one last bizarre text message. "Leo, I'll be waiting for the day you realize what's truly in your heart and come back to me. You'll regret losing me." It was absurd, completely delusional. After taking my wife to visit my father's grave, I immediately bought our plane tickets and left the country. A few months later, I saw in the news that Clara's company had been acquired by Mark's in a hostile takeover, and she had been forced out of her position, falling from a corporate princess to a commoner. After that, I never heard any news about her again. 6 months later, my wife gave birth to a healthy 7.5-pound baby boy. Holding that soft, tiny life in my arms, my heart filled with a profound and simple warmth. Maybe this, I thought, is what happiness really is.
I have to make sure I don't get stuck in games with other fucking streamers, dude. Like, that happened the other night. We kept getting matched up with, like, Wolf and Nightmare and Doom.
No, not this time.
Oh, wrong keys.
Ready for
Capture. Move out and secure.
Why would you do that? I mean, I guess it gives me a good idea where to fucking stand.
We need attack support on the marked objective.
Objective Alpha is under control.
Is it gonna spawn now, or is it fucked just because this is here?
Ready. Pilots are clear to engage.
It doesn't respawn there? Oh, yeah. All the way in the fucking back.